A gorgeous Nissan Leaf has pushed up the daisies, like ceased to be. It is no more. It's off the twig. It's joined the choir invisible. Essentially, it's an ex-parrot, if you know what I mean. Gone up in smoke in Glen Waverley, gateway to beautiful Mulgrave in Australia's most corrupt state, Vicwegia. Authorities are, of course, so keen to reassure the public that it was not the EV's fault. Nothing to see here, dude. We're still on track for net zero, thank the Lord. Not like that's an insane concept at all. Anyway, it wasn't the EV. It was just the dodgy charging of the EV, of course. Pretty clearly, however, at least on my world, if you remove the EV from this entire equation, there would be somewhat less mess to be cleaning up today, wouldn't there? But perhaps this is just me being beyond merely churlish. I'm John Cadogan, Moto Expert. .com.au, new cars cheap, but Australia only. Website, card. So, 9:12 in the morning last Tuesday, Fire and Rescue Vicwegia get this frenzied series of calls on 000, and they roll out to this joint in Glen Waverley with a pressing thermal management issue. Firefighters arrived on scene within 5 minutes to find a garage 10 metres by 5 metres involved in flames. Did the intern perhaps write that? Like, it's not involved in flames, is it? Involved in flames, please. It was on king fire. At least as I see it. The garage and or its contents, including a shitbox Leaf and a Genesis, was on king fire. Thankfully, they're a lot better over there at putting fires out than they are about writing about it afterwards, because Fire and Rescue Vicwegia crews wore breathing apparatus to battle the blaze, and the scene was deemed under control at 9:20 a.m. Well, that's pretty good, except frankly, under control is not a proper noun, obviously. It's a situational state of existence, surely. But at least they got the fire out quickly, and I guess that's the main thing. Like, that's what really matters. Which tells me Shitbox Leaf's battery was not in thermal runaway, because if it were, they would have had to watch it burn for the next, 6 hours, and emptied about 3 Olympic swimming pools onto it, trying to protect abutting residences while the house was reduced to ash and the concrete beneath it got vitrified. So thankfully it wasn't that. The 2 occupants, plus importantly the dog, evacuated themselves and were quite safe when the firefighters arrived. That was early on in the piece. And I do so hate it when the dog pays the ultimate price for a human fucker. That's unacceptable. Like, the dog is unequivocally loyal. It's never going to stab you in the back, dude. Gotta save the dog. Ex-wives could learn a lot from dogs. Just saying, general social commentary. It seems to me that if you want to take effective climate action today and avoid exactly the kind of thing that we're discussing in this video, incidentally, don't just rush out and buy an EV. Fit rooftop solar and a battery to your home instead. And yeah, you heard that right, dude. A battery. Fit one to your home. We'll get to that. However, if you've got rooftop solar already, and plenty of people do, but no battery, it's dead easy in most cases to retrofit a battery to your existing setup. This is going to divorce you from coal, like properly. And coal is, of course, the nation's biggest emitter of CO2. It's vital to realise that not all batteries are the same. Batteries in cars typically use nickel manganese cobalt chemistry, which is energy dense, but it's just not that stable, dude, especially if you let it get ever so slightly too warm. Solar batteries, on the other hand, are typically lithium iron phosphate chemistry, which is not as energy dense, but more durable and far more stable, which is kind of important. And it's only about 10% of the size of the battery in a car in any case. So the ones I recommend, the one I really like, to the extent that I have 12.8 kilowatt hours of it bolted to the side of my house right now, and I sleep just fine at night, is from SunGrow. and it's got more standards compliance than you can poke a stick at. This, to me at least, is a complete no-brainer. It's professionally wired in, nothing moves or vibrates, like it's far from a harsh operating environment, such as a car operates in continuously. Harvest excess photons during the day, burn them overnight and divorce yourself from coal-fired baseload power. Dead easy. Good solution. Plus, it adds value to your home in exact opposition to how hard an EV will depreciate from day one. There's that too. Go to autoexpert.com.au/solar now. I've got a top-notch partner on this with excellent customer support and good wholesale backup in Australia, like onshore. No calls back to China or something, okay? No hard sell, dude. Just go to autoexpert.com.au/solar, fill in the form. We'll take it from there. No obligation. Do it now. Like, you know you want this. Back at Glen Waverley, the fireys spend the next several hours mopping up the garage apocalypse, and because lithium-ion batteries are giving fire and rescue Vicwegia a bit of a barbed wire enema roughly once a day lately, they call their in-house investigators the FIU, which sounds like shorthand profanity or, I guess, a terrible disease of the reproductive organs, but it isn't. Nobody wants FIU of the gonads, just saying, but we're talking about the Fire Investigation Unit. Ultimately, the FIU investigators find that the blaze was initiated by a dodgy charging setup. I'll let them describe that, because this next bit is kind of important. The Fire Investigation Unit determined the fire was not caused by the electric vehicle, but from a travel adapter connected to an aftermarket charging lead. The important backstory here is that those cheap at Nissan Australia, no reference to individuals is made. I'm talking about cheap corporate mentality only in this report, possibly under direction from head office in Japan, but of course, one never knows. Anyway, those penny-pinching at Nissan Australia are overjoyed to sell you one of the least popular and fastest depreciating EVs available today, but they're not happy to include a charger that you can just plug into a standard GPO, like a 10-amp wall outlet at home. However, they will happily sell you one as an accessory. They call it, excuse me, a contingency charger, and it costs more than $500, which I have to say seems like an epic touch-up from where I sit. I don't know how they can do that to you with a straight face. The contingency is obviously you might just want to charge a brand new EV when you get home. 99 cents worth of electronics, 2 standard plugs and, 5 meters of cable. That'll be 500 and something bucks, you assholes. Not talking about any individuals, obviously, just corporate, quote-unquote, logic. Especially as this kind of conduct inevitably leads to newsworthy events in Glen Waverley, such as this one. You see this? This is an aftermarket charger of presumably exceptional quality off AliExpress. More than 100 available right now, dude. Just $77. Imagine that. IP66 allegedly for water and dust ingress protection, which, if true, is pretty high. And also allegedly IEC 32196 Type 2 standards compliance on the plug. So that's nice, if true. The unit itself claims to be capable of drawing 16 amps at 240 volts out of the wall for 3.5 kilowatts maximum. That's a lot of electricity in the context of something sitting on the floor in your home, especially if it runs for 10 or 12 hours. Also, it's switchable down to 13, 10 or 8 amps. And it's unclear from the ad whether this is user selectable or it's just automatic. I couldn't find a PDF manual on this one to download, so we're all in the dark on that. So essentially, this particular aftermarket cable charging kit comes with a standard Euro wall plug, like a Schuko Stecker, I think they call it. Anyway, so I'm tipping, and this is just a hypothesis on the balance of probabilities, that our heroes at this particular apocalypse said words to the effect of, "Fuck you and your $500 cable, Nissan." And they bought something like that. It arrives. A few days later, some courier drops it off. They unwrap it, and they're staring at a Euro plug, and that's not going to fit our wall outlet, is it? So they hunt around for that travel adapter from 5 years back when they inflicted themselves on Italy or France, much to the delight of the Italians and or French, I'm sure. Like, problem solved, right? What an elegant solution, reusing that stuff that we're never going to use again, probably. And it all fits so nicely, like, yay, let's charge. They plug it in, and it probably starts drawing 16 amps out of the wall, which is just Goldilocks, because it's not quite enough to trip the breaker in the fuse box. The breaker's not going to trip until 20, but the travel adapter, dude, guaranteed cannot handle that much current for all that long at all. And it's probably a 10 amp maximum kind of thing, and not even particularly happy at that load. So pretty soon thereafter, it just melts, and there's your fire. Like, the travel adapter is a dumb device too. It's not capable of communicating with the aftermarket charger, even if the charger is capable of listening to a device such as that in that way, which, you know, for $77, it's probably not. That fine AliExpress charger was probably, quote unquote, designed on the default expectation that the user would select the appropriate current for their specific wiring circumstances, which is fine, I guess, if you believe that the average, proud, Australian 5-star bogan understands basic domestic electrodynamics. So, probably a bad design choice, I'd suggest. It also presumes that nobody would accidentally bump the button on the box of the aftermarket charger and accidentally nudge the current up to 16 amps. Like, I don't know, but perhaps your dog might even step on it, and that might be enough. Who knows? I can see a scientifically illiterate weapons-grade bogan looking at it and just switching the box to 16 immediately to charge up as quick as possible, right? I'm not saying that our heroes did exactly this. What I'm saying is that on the balance of probability, this is the most likely sequence of events leading to garage apocalypse in Glen Waverley. It fits with Barely Literate Fire and Rescue Vicwegia's release, which states that the fire started, quote, from a travel adapter connected to an aftermarket charging lead. This clearly says it's the travel adapter that failed, okay? I'm expecting a torrent of not the EV's fault from the capital E, capital V evangelists out there in the comments on this one. Like, go for it, dude, if that's you. Please do not disappoint me. However, Professor James Reason, the father of modern disaster analysis, developed back in the year 2000 the leading model for cataclysm prevention. You can Google it. It's called the Swiss cheese model or Swiss cheese theory. It was published in, I'm going to say, the British Medical Journal in a report that, if memory serves, was called Human Error Model and Management, something like that. Anyway, it involves thinking about a safe system being somewhat like a block of Swiss cheese which has been cut up into slices. The slices act like layers of defence against disaster. The holes in each slice are therefore weaknesses in each layer of defence. And if the holes ever line up, for example, 2 cars get destroyed and 2 people and their dog nearly die, while their house gets wholly or partially destroyed, or a little mini sub collapses, or 3 Mile Island has a bit of a problem, or Chernobyl, or those 2 space shuttle missions, Challenger and the other one that I can't think of off the top of my head, but Columbia. And toxic fumes, in our case, go freaking everywhere, all over the neighbourhood, thanks very much. Cars are all toxic when they burn. It doesn't have to be the batteries, right? Anyway, the more cheese slices in play, the harder it is to get the holes to line up and the less likely a disaster is. So, I'd suggest that if those cheap at Nissan in Shitsville, no reference to individuals is made here, as previously mentioned, if they had simply included an Australia-ready, safe home charging solution with their shitbox Leaf, this event would probably not have occurred at all, okay? So does Nissan Australia bear some moral, if not legal, responsibility? On my world, shit yeah. If we had laws making it illegal to transfer what is essentially commercial quantities of electrical energy inside your freaking garage, seems like a bad idea, and we back them up with a public education campaign about the dangers, then this kind of thing would be far less frequent, would it not? Like, just make it illegal to charge an EV in your garage and explain to people why. Charge on the forecourt out the front, dude. Like, it's so much safer. If our heroes here had commissioned a freaking electrician to fit a level 1 charger, imagine that, using a $10 travel adapter to source the power to start an EV is, to me at least, worryingly ignorant of how basic shit actually works. But there is, of course, no law against ignorance. Imagine how many jails would need to be built if there were. I suppose if you've been perhaps a high-level pen pusher in HR your whole career, for example, then there's probably no requirement whatsoever to understand a single practical thing at all. I'm very biased in this regard. Some would say nasty. It's just who I am. So let me put this as clearly as I can. Charging an EV is not like charging up your wireless earbuds. Dude, you are transferring a fuck-ton of energy, and that energy deserves considerable respect. Because hydrocarbons like petrol and LPG, natural gas in the stove, plus electricity from the wall, are all in such common usage, we touch them every day kind of thing, we tend to forget how preposterously dangerous they can be, potentially at least. Now, the reason people don't die more often at the filling station or a weekend barbecue or cooking dinner or drying their fucking hair is because of robust, engineered-in, systematic protection. You are earthed, like you are at the same potential as Earth, and so is your car, and so is the Bowser when you refuel your car at a filling station. LPG and natural gas are made to stink artificially using a chemical called ethyl mercaptan, I think. Anyway, let's say you can tell the room is filling up with that explosive, asphyxiating shit if there's some kind of leak, which is so helpful. Without that ethyl crap, methane and propane are odourless and you would never know, and then you just wake up dead, and that's always inconvenient to the people you leave behind. There's a fast-acting core balance relay stopping every dipshit using domestic electricity who makes himself an effective conduction path to Earth, unwittingly, from dying. But not on lighting circuits, so extra care required there, dude. Always assume it's not going to be there or not work if present. And anyway, this is what electricians are for, so don't go near it if you don't know what it does. We seem to have omitted entirely this systematic protection with EVs, right? Because regulators really don't want anything getting in the way of their mad enthusiasm for net zero. And at the same time, Australia paradoxically remains the world's #1 and #2 exporter of coal and natural gas, respectively. Fucking hypocrites. We wouldn't want anything like safety to get in the way of net zero. Like, Jesus. P.S. I won't be able to say that at all when those assholes get their misinformation bill up. You know, I just won't be able to make criticism of that nature. Their anti-criticism bill, shame on them. Their George Orwell bill. Anyway, we need to integrate EVs into society the same way we've integrated petrol and household electricity and barbecue gas and natural gas for the stove. Like, we need to do it safely, and we're just not doing that. And it's so frustrating if you've been trained how. Like, we're simply selling the vehicles and making the rest of that shit up in real time, just sort of sweeping it under the rug. It's a Band-Aid versus, you know, chemotherapy. And this is not acceptable, at least not to me. I'm going to leave you with a final piece of abject hilarity from those geniuses at Fire and Rescue Vicwegia. They issued that news release about the recent shitbox Leaf Glen Waverley apocalypse, okay? It's 327 side-splitting words long. And right at the end, there are 128 words on, quote, "To minimise your risks of a fire caused by a rechargeable lithium-ion battery, Fire and Rescue Vicwegia recommends." And then they listed 7 points, which all completely missed the target in relation to countermeasures for this incident. Firstly, this fire was not caused by a lithium-ion battery. It was caused by using the dodgiest conceivable self-melting charging setup, which overloaded the Mr. Puniverse of travel chargers, which was designed pretty clearly only to help you keep your laptop and phone charged up while you're being some sort of textbook bogan in Europe, as opposed to transferring commercial quantities of electricity from the wall to your shitbox Leaf. None of the points they mentioned would constitute a countermeasure for this quite worrying event. These points include, quote, "Only use chargers and cords that are originally supplied with that device." Unfortunately, a shitbox Leaf does not come with one, and following this advice would mean never using a public charger or a wallbox type level 1 charger installed professionally by an electrician if you fit one to your home. So that's ever so slightly fucking stupid, as I see it. They also say, quote, "Using chargers with incorrect power delivery, voltage and current can cause damage to the battery or overheating that can lead to fires." This is not what caused the fire. The charger didn't damage the battery or overheat it. The voltage and current of the charger was correct, as in compatible with shitbox Leaf. Plus, they say, quote, "Purchase products from a reputable supplier and follow the manufacturer's instructions." There's no evidence that this fire was caused by the inferior reputation of a supplier or some failure to follow any manufacturer's instructions. So how about this advice? And please let me know what you think in the comments. Here we go. Don't use a travel adapter as part of a dodgy setup to charge your fucking EV, you idiot. You know this fire could have been prevented simply by getting an electrician to put an Australian plug on the cable of that aftermarket charger, right? And just maybe, for good measure, a 15 amp plug in the garage on its own circuit. Certainly this would have been a lot cheaper than rebuilding half the house, hey? Or if there'd just been a charger supplied standard with the frickin' car, which would have probably added about 25 bucks to the price. Like, Jesus. But no, we could sell an accessory for 500 bucks instead. So what if some people expose themselves to this risk because they just don't know? On the positive side, I guess there's at least one less shitbox Leaf out there on the roads today. And the dog was okay. So, on balance, it's not all bad.